Okay, yeah, I will. Thanks. So, Minister, this our own amendment, Amendment 2, which I move, is for us to for the Dáil to look at the cost of us abolishing the universal social charge and replacing it with a higher income social charge of 10% on all earnings over €90,000. I will also make reference to 3 actually in my comments, but to the Amendment 3. But look, the argument is very, very simple. We did discuss it at the committee stage of the bill, but I still think it's important. And I wouldn't underestimate, I'll just put it simply, Minister, I wouldn't underestimate the sense of grievance that working people still feel over the imposition of the universal social charge. At that time, as you know, but it is worth recalling, working people in this country took an absolutely unprecedented hit for a financial and economic crisis that was not their fault, that they had played no hand, act or part in creating. A crisis that was entirely the responsibility of gambling bankers, gambling property speculators and developers, and successive governments that had facilitated a sort of gold rush when it came to making money from property. And that had dire consequences for this country, but it is worth saying globally. And that's not just a sort of history lesson, because of course we are at so many different levels still dealing with the consequences of that, both in this country and internationally. Because the folly of turning speculation on property for profit, the lesson hasn't been learned on that. It's still going on. It's still at the back of our current housing disaster, and it nearly crashed. Well, it did crash the entire global economy, and it seems very little lessons are learned. But in terms of this amendment, the point was it was working people who took the hit. And one of the most egregious hits that were taken, and which people are still suffering, was the imposition of the universal social charge. A dramatic increase in the tax burden on ordinary workers. And I don't have the figures directly to hand, but I think I'm roughly correct in saying that pre the USC, I think workers in total were paying about €23 billion between them in tax. And that jumped to well over 30 billion as a result of the USC and the various austerity measures that were taken. And it is worth pondering those sort of figures. There was a dramatic increase in the burden of tax imposed on working people. And you think that this year, all the corporations in this country, in what is being considered a bumper year for corporate tax receipts, is €20 billion. But the gross profits being recorded by those companies in the latest available figures were €193 billion, far in excess of what the total aggregate earnings of PAYE workers are. And you did say, I think you said, I certainly asked you in the committee stage if you had estimates of what corporate profits were for 2022, given that you were able to project a possible 21 billion. In fact, I think you said at committee stage 21 billion is now projected to come in corporate tax receipts. So that would suggest, looking at the pattern of all the previous years, that there was a really absolutely enormous jump in corporate profits in 2021 and 2, or both, for us to get from a figure of 11 billion being paid in corporate tax in 2020 up to a now projected 21 billion. So maybe you could enlighten us on that. But either way, the net point is that all of the workers in this country combined earn less in gross income than all the corporations earn in gross profits, but those workers pay much more tax. Now, I think that's fundamentally unfair, and a major contributory factor to that unfairness, that inequality in who earns the most and who pays the most is the universal social charge. That worsened an already iniquitous situation. And although the government have made some adjustments to the universal social charge over the intervening years, it is still a very significant burden which people see in their paychecks every week or every month. So I believe it should be got rid of, and we believe it could be paid for by, first of all, introducing the higher income social charge that I mentioned. And before you say that the higher income social charge that we are proposing would not cover the full cost of abolishing the universal social charge, I will just say, as you know, I said at committee, and we've made clear, that would not be the only measure we would take. We would also introduce new bands of income tax for the highest earners, 4 bands for those earning in excess of €100,000. And between those two measures, we would cover the cost of abolishing the USC. And not to mention then many other things we propose in our alternative budget, which I have here in front of me, and which the Minister did acknowledge he actually reads, which fair play to him, which does set out a number of other additional tax measures that would be taken to cover the cost.
Please, thanks very much. 7 minutes is up.